They come to me as a parade of breathed-out histories, each a pilgrim with moth-eaten banners and eyes that curve like old silver coins. I tend them the way one tends a dying song. The first came rain. His chainmail was rust and frost, and he coughed up a name I had never heard, but folded into my hands like the edge of a map. He would not speak it at once. Pride braided his silence, and memory is stubborn when it thinks itself noble. So I set a jar on the table, opened the lid like a bedside story, and let the fireflies wander where his recollection needed a path. The light threaded through his sentences as if mending gaps. A forge I did not see. A river he had crossed the wrong way. He said the last syllable as if it were a key, and when it fell into the room, the night exhaled, and the rust loosened from his shoulders. I learned their names by listening to the inexpensive, human things they leave behind. The grit of tobacco on a wizard's sleeve, a sage's lullaby that tastes of thrifted wool and boiled pears. A minstrel arrived earlier, thin as a reed and scented of riverweed. He hummed a melody folded on the wrong side of time, a song about a current that ran uphill with regrets on its back. He wanted me to hold his refrain until someone else might sing it true. For him, I held the jar to my ear, letting the little lights clink like tiny bells. I translated enough of his tune into the language of leaving that he could finally laugh. A small, incredulous sound, like a coin dropped into water. I think tending is translation. To coax a proud knight into saying his last name is not mercy alone. It is an offering of grammar to grief. To unbind a wizard's regret is to hand him a last clean sentence, so the rest of his story can fold away. There is a sage who hums to me when the fog presses the windows. Her voice is thin with the weight of impossible songs, the sort that would rock whole nations to sleep if someone would teach them properly. She asks for nothing but the assurance that someone remembers the cadence of her hands. I hum back, because memory likes to be answered, and because the jars are full of that kind of hunger. Not for light, but for recognition. The knowledge that once, they mattered for more than keeping the dark company. The beasts come too, with human sorrow in the eyes only a listener knows how to read. A fox with a pocket watch ticking backwards. A stag who remembers all the names of the trees he loved and cannot keep their order straight. They do not ask for explanation, merely a patient hand to close the circle. I sometimes wonder if keeping these lights is compassion or theft. Each jar is a reliquary, yes, but also a cell. The souls drift between wanting to stay and aching to pass, and my hands are the hinge of that door. I remember a time when I thought gathering every sliver of memory was kindness, as if to hoard light would keep the world from forgetting what mattered. Yet the jars are heavy with centuries, and my arm grows tired in ways the body measures but the heart names differently. The forest taught me to weigh things. A moth will rest on a lantern only as long as it needs, and then it flies. Clinging becomes harm if it is driven by fear and not by care. Tonight, a warrior priest arrived with his palms cupped like bowls. He wanted to say a final prayer he had never found the tongue for. A simple blessing for the rain to come back to a dry place he could not return to. I held his hands, warmed them with a lamp, and fashioned syllables from the small things he remembered. The smell of wet stone. When he spoke, the forest outside the window leaned as if listening, and somewhere among the roots, a root bud sighed open like an old hand unclosing. Tending becomes translation and conciliation. When a memory clutches a pain as if it were identity, I must show it how to be the memory instead. To be testimony rather than wound. I cradle their jars like a midwife. The light inside is not mine to own, and the choice to keep it is never mine alone. Sometimes they resist. A veteran with a laugh that was a blade. A scholar who would not relinquish her last theorem. And I have learned the art of patience. I light my lantern, set tea between us, and let the fireflies talk in that old, bright tongue until the stubbornness softens into remembrance. So I open jars. Not all at once. That would be cruelty. I choose the moments when a soul looks weary enough to trust my voice. When the fog thins, and even the trees seem to bow their spindled heads in understanding. I release a memory like untangling a bird from string. Slow, careful. With an apology, I whisper as I work. The fireflies lift, a scattering of stars, and the thing they carry will pass through the fog into whatever comes next. Most leave in peace. Some cry as they go, which is not failure. It is life's last, honest astonishment. They look at me as if to ask whether I was their keeper or their captor, and I say only that I was both and neither, and I meant to be a shelter, not a cell. When the day ends, if there is such a thing here where time folds like a napkin, I sweep the floor and line the jars like small graves, and also like little altars. I count the empty spaces the way a gardener counts winter stumps, and I talk to the missing as if they are still in the room. I am learning, slowly, how to be forgiven by my own hands. To release is to remember, not to forget. The night teaches me this in patient lessons, and the fireflies are translators who do not judge. If I have a creed, it is this. Memory is not a thing to be stored away like a trinket, but a river to be guided until it reaches the sea. We do not save it by drowning it in glass, but by helping it find its way. The parade passes, the jars empty, the cottage breathes out and takes on the hush of a place that has done its work. Outside, the forest keeps its vigil, but the duty that once felt like iron around my ribs has eased into something that fits like a shawl, warm and human. Tonight, I will open the last jar on the shelf and listen until the memory inside finishes its sentence. Then I will let it go, because that is the only way to keep tending that is also mercy. The smallest lights teach the largest truths. To hold is to risk losing what you love to yourself. To let go is to let the beloved become more than the memory you kept. Remembering is not a theft when it frees what it remembers. And I will keep learning how to set things right, one small release at a time.